Today, we're here to talk about JAMstack, specifically with a combination here, Next.js, Agility CMS, and Vercel. So we're going to be covering some interesting stuff today. Lots of stuff in the space around Next.js and Vercel has changed over the last year, and actually including Agility CMS too. We've even had some people that have built sites on Agility using the stack already, and just a few months ago, and there's already all this new stuff that has come out that can make things better. So the purpose of today is really learn a little bit more about the stack, what's new, what's different, how to get started with it, and really place a huge importance here on the editor experience. Because I think that's one area of focus we really want to get better with JAMstack. So, and I'm thinking, if this works out really well, we can start calling this the nav stack. Next, Agility, and Vercel. I don't know if it's going to catch on, but I'm going to go with that for now, and we'll see. So yeah, the thing I really want to highlight today is the editor experience. Like we often know that building sites with JAMstack and JavaScript is amazing developer experience, and it enables developers to build great user experiences. But the editor experience is really something here that I want to place a lot of importance on. So if I refer to something as X, I'm talking about your editor experience, not talking about your X partner. It's the editor experience we talk about here. So a few things about me in case you haven't met me before. My name is James Bidley. I'm the VP of product here at Agility. I've actually been at Agility now for about 8 years. So a lot has changed in our company over that time period. We went from sort of only supporting, a way to build websites using .NET to now our sort of platform is completely open and platform agnostic. It was always a headless CMS, but now it's much more than that. Some other sort of personal things about me, if you'll get to know me a bit more, is that kind of similar to Lewis, we were just talking earlier, that I'm a bit of a gamer, at least part of the time. I know since COVID hit, I've been playing a lot more games lately, but I'm also kind of into some game development on the side, VR development specifically. I actually have a game that's released on the Oculus Go store, and that sort of keeps me busy in my spare time, whatever time is left over from all this. And I'm very happy to welcome a special guest today, Luis Alvarez. He is a Next.js developer who works at Vercel. And Luis, do you want to introduce yourself here to everyone?
Yeah, sure. So I'm part of the Next.js team at Vercel. I live in Colombia. I've been working in Vercel for a year and a half now. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. All right. So thanks for having us, or thanks for coming. We're going to dive into some Next.js stuff, and I'm going to have some questions for Lewis here. And I'm sure anyone else here that also has questions, feel free to ask, and we can answer as we go. So for those of you who don't know much about Agility CMS, let me just take a few minutes to talk about it a little bit. So we are a company that is entirely bootstrapped. We've been around for, I want to say like over a decade now. I mentioned it a little bit before, but we started off with .NET, and now we've opened up our platform to really work with any sort of framework. We're taking some of the lessons we've learned over the years and applying that to some of the new ways of building websites with JAMstack. And we're based out of Toronto, Canada. And we are really, really invested in JAMstack. We think it's the sort of way to build websites of the future. So we're working hard to make sure that folks that are wanting to use great frameworks such as Next or Gatsby and other frameworks like that are able to come onto our platform and be able to sort of get started quickly, and for us to be able to sort of help help put people in positions to be successful. We are the only headless CMS out there right now with built-in page management as a core concept, and we'll talk about that as a larger theme later in today's webinar. Our system was built by developers, really for developers, over the course of a decade, and now we're so happy to be able to have everyone else using our platform. We are big enough for billion-dollar brands that are out on the platform, but we are small enough to really care about each user and each customer right now. So just to give you guys a snapshot, these are some of the customers that are currently using Agility CMS. So we're talking, very large scale websites with a lot of stuff going on. And Agility is a great fit for something when you really need to control everything about your entire experience. So if you have any questions or you want to learn more about how some of our customers are using Agility, feel free to hit me up anytime. You can contact me on Twitter, or you can always just email me. And Agility's vision here is, we're really passionate about a content-first methodology. So we really want to come up with a way where you never have to rebuild your website from scratch all the time. And the way we can sort of allow that to work is, the idea is you sort of build a content structure that's going to sort of stand the test of time. And you may rebuild your front end, you may use different front end technologies in the way that you use your website over time. Those things will change, but your sort of core content structure really should never change. And where you'll make just small tweaks to it over time. We want to get away with the idea where every 3 or 4 years, you need to completely rebuild your website. So that's our goal to get there, a future where you never have to do that again. And we believe the success, of a project that's on a CMS, specifically a website, really depends on the sort of 3 experiences. I touched on it a little bit already, but we're talking about the user experience, we're talking about the editor experience, and the developer experience. And I think, we all need to consider all those different personas, right? There's the user that's going to be using the website. So obviously, the website itself needs to be good. The editor experience, people actually managing the content day to day for that website, and then the experience of what it's like to develop on it. And we'll talk a little bit about what the landscape is like right now in terms of where JAMstack fits in here and where some of its pitfalls are, and how I think we can really solve that actually using the NAVstack. So before we get too far into that, though, Louis, I'd love to hear from your own words. What is Next.js? And for some of our attendees that are on here and maybe haven't used it before, what is Next.js, and where does that sort of fit in the JAMstack?
So Next.js is, in short words, the React framework. And what Next.js wants to be is the way to go when you think of building a React application, right? In order for us to provide that, what we want is to give you the best developer experience, and to also allow you to ship something that has incredibly good defaults and that is incredibly fast by just building an app with Next.js. So what this translates into is that we want you to build a front-end app without having to worry about Next.js, about the framework behind it. We want you to write React code and ship something that's good always.
Mm-hmm. And so, why would someone look to use Next.js as opposed to just picking up a Create React app and starting from there? What are some of the things that you said that it allows you to start from the place that has really good a default setup? What are some of those sort of great things that provides out of the box?
So what Next.js offers you, besides a great developer experience, is to allow you to build an app that is always hybrid. Hybrid meaning you can decide on a per route basis where you want to ship static content, meaning static pages, or you want to have serverless functions that will return static content, or if you need an API, we also have support for API routes, and we also allow you to have the data fetching methods that allow you to go into your database, get some content, and then generate a static page. And there are a lot of built-in features, we have support for environment variables, CSS in JS2, fast refresh, meaning whenever you make a change, it will immediately translate into a browser. All of this, we do it with a lot of a set of very good defaults. So when you start building with Next.js, you get out of this out of the box. You have to worry about configuring anything, but if you want to configure anything, we provide you like a set of instructions to make that work. And we do it this way because we want to set every developer into the path of success, meaning you build your app, whatever you get as a result of building your app is going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like what sort of gravitated me towards Next.js was, when I first started learning React, I learned using the Create React app, right? And I even built one of my first websites using that. It was actually for that gaming website, or that VR game that I was telling you about that I made. So I made a website for that, and the first thing I did is I did that using Create React app, and one of the first things I noticed, and after I deployed it, was like, oh shoot, this is not SEO friendly because my whole site is just running in the browser on the client. There's no specific page routes, and while it looks fine for a user, it really wasn't going to be something that you'd want to deploy in production, right? Google wasn't able to crawl it, for example. And
yeah, so we create real app. You are always like shipping a lot of JS because you're shipping everything in a single bundle.
Yeah.
In Next.js, we do bundles per route. So whenever you load a route, you only load the JavaScript required for that route, and we allow you to prefetch any other routes that might be linked in the in the initial route you loaded. So when you do a route transition, it feels incredibly fast, like if you were a single build.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. You'll see some performance benefits there. So not only SEO, but also performance benefits there. So, and yeah, really, like if you're looking at building a website in React, like it's sort of a no brainer to use Next.js, or, I talk about Gatsby as well, which is another way of doing things. Two very different approaches to take on the same thing. I do find that, Gatsby is quite opinionated in exactly how to do things. So you kind of have to learn the Gatsby ways of doing things, which is a little bit harder at first. Whereas I do think working with Next.js, just personally in my experience, was a lot closer to just writing React code. And sort of the rest of it sort of gets out of the way, and you can still, add a lot of custom stuff on top of it if you really want to.
Yeah, Next.js's opinion has an opinion on that your app has to be fast.
Yeah.
However, we don't tell you how you have to build your app, right? And we provide you all the tools so you can build your app in any way you want. And also warn you when we know that you could do something better, like if you ship static content, that's better than shipping a serverless function where your user has to wait for the content. And when you ship static content, we also provide you a way of revalidating the content and generating new pages after a deployment. So you don't have to be stuck with just static content. You can also have dynamic content that is also static.
Right. Yeah, and that's really cool how you mix and match that kind of stuff. We'll hold that thought. Maybe we'll come back to that. So that was Next.js. So what is Vercel? And it might even be worth noting what Vercel used to be.
Right. So Vercel previously named site and had a pod called Now. All of that is now just Vercel. So now the product it was before is also called named Vercel now. And so I like to think of Vercel as I like to think of Next.js because they have a very similar purpose. That means Vercel has a big focus on developer experience so that you can focus on building your app without having to worry about deployments, about previews, about shipping it, because Vercel will just take care of that for you and you don't have to do anything about it. The only thing you need is to have an account. So the way it works is you start developing your app with Next.js or any other framework. Then you do a git push to your repo, and for every git push you do, you get a preview deployment, which enables you to share that deployment with anyone from your team, and also enables collaboration with anyone from your team. And the final step is you merge something into your main branch and you get a deployment that's on production already, right? You didn't do anything special here. You don't have to add any Vercel configuration. It just works out of the box, which is, again, very similar to how Next.js works. We provide you the best developer experience and push you in the path of success.
And in terms of stuff that you actually can host on Vercel, like, I've certainly played around with Vercel many times with Next.js sites, but, I was also able to deploy like a Gatsby site to it, for example. So it doesn't seem like it's not like it's tied to Next.js specifically. Obviously, there are certain benefits of using Next.js with Vercel, because with Vercel, you know a lot about how Next.js stuff works. So there's some magic you can do behind the scenes. But it's not just for Next.js, is it?
No, we support a lot of different frameworks, including Gatsby. And we also, when I say like we focus a lot on getting preview deployments so you can ship faster. This is very important for us because, for example, let's say we release our conference site like 2 days ago, the Next.js Conf. We already have like 19,000 people with their ticket already. And the way we did this was there was a small team building the conference site, but the entire company had like a big interest on making sure it was going to be a success, right? So we were developing the conference site, and then we were doing a push, sharing the previews with everyone in the team. Even with people that weren't developers, their feedback was very important for us. And did multiple iterations and achieved something that was very good, right?
Nice.
Of course, it wasn't perfect, but even though it wasn't perfect, a mechanic of it was as simple as let's commit this code, then get a review. It was ready for deployment, merge, and it is already on production.
Yeah. Well, and getting all that traffic going there, probably around the same time as when you guys announced it, get people to sign up. I guess some of the benefits of having it being a static site is that it's not going to go down, right? Even though you had a lot of traffic, I'm sure you didn't have any issues.
Yeah. Also, something I didn't mention about both Next.js and Vercel is that because you only have to focus about front end, what about well it'll scale? And Next.js will definitely scale with any size of applications. And Vercel is the same thing, right? Vercel will make sure that your app is deployed in the edge, meaning you will always get like a very low response time no matter where you are in the world, and it will always be available.
Nice. All right, so let's look at the sort of I want to get back to those experiences that we're talking about: the editor experience, the user experience, developer experience. A lot of the benefits we talked about with Next.js and Vercel there, a lot of those were sort of covering the developer experience, and some of it the editor experience too, right? You talked about workflows, being able to sort of like preview like deployments before they sort of go into production, that kind of thing. So let's look at how those experiences sort of match up when you're thinking of how people might build websites. So it's like right now, let's say you have a website, but you don't have a content management system. So you actually take your conference website, for example. Are you guys using a CMS to manage content there, or essentially you just have developers changing content as they need to?
Well, because the only content that's there is you put an email and then you get a ticket.
All right, so there wasn't that much of a need.
We're doing is we're using Redux. Oh wait, sorry, Redis to like say the email, and then we generate an image with your ticket.
Right. Right. Okay. So yeah, maybe not the best case for CMS there, but I think the example still holds up. So it was probably a great developer experience for anyone working on that project, because they're using Next.js. They're all happy. It obviously resulted in a great user experience. The website looks great. Check it out if you guys haven't. But let's say you had a marketer on your team and their job was to change content that's on that page and be able to sort of, iterate on that content. And they're not a developer, they wouldn't have a great experience with that, because they'd have to email a developer and be like, hey, can you change the text to equal this thing? They don't really have that control. So it would lead to a poor editor experience if you had those kind of users on your team that wanted to be able to manage this stuff, right? So, you have a website, you don't have a CMS. We know that can be a great developer experience, great user experience, but, not so great editor experience. So it's kind of an underwhelming result there overall across those three experiences. And then if we look at like traditional CMSs, and when I say traditional, I mean like non-headless CMSs, those that are like, we're talking about the WordPresses, the Sitecores, the Drupals, typically those use like, older server-side technologies like .NET or PHP. Those actually give us, pretty good editor experience. Those have been around for a long time, and, they've really perfected the editor experience. Editors go and they change content, they publish it, they see it on the site, they can preview it. They are able to really manage a lot of the content on their site. The problem is that those things get antiquated quite quickly, those systems, and also developers are kind of constrained in terms of, what programming languages they can use, how they need to build certain things. These are very opinionated systems that can be difficult to understand and configure. So the developer experience is not that great. And because of that, I just saw a comment here. They're also hard to deploy as well, right? So you have a lot of things that you need to sort of manage there. So you might have a great editor experience, but the user experience at the end of the day, because your developer experience is not that great, it might not line up well, right? If your developers aren't happy, they might cut some corners on the UX, right? They might not be able to provide the best thing, or again, you may be locked into using a certain CSS a certain way or certain page layouts that you're kind of stuck and you can't modernize. So that's kind of a little bit better, but still not great. And so now we're looking at like, all right, let's look at the stack of like, let's say you're building a website, it's with the headless CMS, and you're using a JAMstack framework like Next.js or Gatsby or something like that. Developer experience is great, user experience is probably even better, but still, there are some issues around the editor experience, and those are the things that I really want to hone in here and see how we can configure our nav stack to actually address these issues. And so let's look at what is wrong with the editor experience in JAMstack. Why are editors not loving it yet? And we've done some research with people using our own system as well as other headless CMSs, users that come from managing content from WordPress, and now they're using a JAMstack, and what complaints or pain points that they sort of have. So let's take a few minutes here and go through some of this stuff. So, number one is, a lot of people say, and they can't preview content in real time because they're coming from, again, like WordPress, where they can make a change, click a button, preview it, and decide whether they want to publish it. All that happens in seconds, not minutes or waiting for a build to happen or anything like that. It's really hard for an editor to do their job when they can't see what their changes are going to look like before they actually do something. They don't have to wait for a rebuild. They also feel like they have limited control over like their pages that are in their website. The ability to create new pages, deleting pages, create redirects, all those things that, as an editor, that might be your job, is to actually manage your pages on your page tree and redirects and SEO and that kind of thing. You may not be a developer, but this is, these roles exist where we have editors that are now becoming sort of power users that expect to be able to control more things. So they also say that they have limited control over what content is actually on a page. So not only what pages are in their website, but also exactly what is on each page. They feel like they don't have a lot of control over that. Because they often have to wait for builds and that kind of stuff, they also feel like, they publish things and sometimes it doesn't go live, sometimes it does. They may not be aware that a build has failed for whatever reason. They just feel kind of lost. And just publishing just takes too long. They don't understand the concept of builds. It's sort of just beyond them a little bit too much. So at the end, they really just feel powerless. And so I think, we can certainly do better. And all it takes is just keeping these things in mind when you actually are building a site in JAMstack with headless CMS. There are ways you can fix all of these things, especially with using Next.js and Vercel. So I'm going to walk you through how we can actually set this stuff up and do a bit of a demo here. So we can sort of get out of these slides, we can jump into some code. But what we're going to do here is we're going to show you how you can set up a preview environment using Next.js, how we can give users the gift of page management, actually allow editors to manage all their pages and stuff, and how we can speed up publishing content and how they can change content on their website much faster. So I'm going to jump over here. I've already signed up for an Agility CMS starter site. But if you want to sign up for your own, if you just go to agilitycms.com here, select get started, and you can try our system out, create an account here. In the following screen, it'll ask you which template you want to use. I would say go ahead, jump and hit the Next.js template to continue. When you're done there, you'll be taken into your instance. And the first thing you're going to want to do is we're going to want to let's see if we can deploy this. Let's deploy it and let's try to get preview working. Because right now I have a headless CMS, but it's not really connected to any code whatsoever at this point. I just have a place in Agility where I have shared content, which is going to show me like, okay, these are my blog posts, these are my authors, my categories. So I have some lists here with some content. But again, I have no way to sort of view this content in any sort of real way. It's just headless content at this point. I also have a page tree that has a couple pages in here where I have like a home page, a blog, and I have an About Us page. So some sample content that's set up. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're actually going to go ahead and deploy the site. So we're going to go ahead and actually use some of the latest features here on the deploy button that Vercel has to actually deploy the site to Vercel. What's cool about this is we can actually pass in a lot of parameters here to this to really simplify deploying this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the deploy button here. This is the GitHub repo that we're going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and hit continue on that. I'll just set this up using my team. And let's just go ahead and hit continue. So at this point here, what this is doing is we've actually informed Vercel saying, hey, when someone wants to deploy a site to Vercel using this template, you got to set a few environment variables. And these are the variables that we need so we can authenticate with Agility. So I'm just going to jump back here. I'm going to click on API keys. Just going to grab some of these values and just paste them in here. And there's one last one here that is a little buried, but we're going to fix that. So I'm just going to grab a security key here. This is so that my site can preview, so that Vercel can actually access my preview content. And I'm going to go ahead and hit deploy here. And this should. Oh, I just said this. Ismail just said you can do a nice hack and group all the environment variables into a single environment variable, split it with a That's interesting. That's a good hack. I'll have to look at that next time. So at this point here, this is actually going and deploying my site for the first time. Assuming I put in all the right API keys, this should just work. So we'll give it a sec here while it sort of goes ahead and deploys. While we're waiting there, let's jump ahead to sort of what our next step is going to be. Once this deploys, the next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to just grab the URL of the Vercel domain, and we're just going to have to tell Agility about it so that Agility knows to open up certain URLs and domains when you're trying to preview something from the system. Because that way, and when an editor is in our system and they're on a page or they're on some content, that way they can just go ahead and click the preview button to actually preview their site. Right now, there's no preview domain set up, so you can't preview. But look, go ahead. Yay. I have to say, Lewis, the confetti was a really nice touch here. Good job for whoever thought about that one. So now I've got my site live here, right? I've got my domain as well. I'm going to go ahead, copy that. I'm going to go back into Agility here, and I'm going to go ahead and sort of register that in my as a domain here. So I'm going to call this Vercel. I'm going to pop that domain URL in there. And I'm also going to specify that this is going to be both my preview domain and it's going to be my production domain. So then that way I have my production thing, but I can also preview that environment. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. That was weird. Number of channels exceeded. Well, it's always great doing live demos for things, isn't it? That's okay. I'm going to actually just switch to another one here that I already have set up, and we'll take a look and see why that is happening. So I'm going to go to, yeah, this guy here. So this one here is actually a site that I actually already have set up. So if I actually go, it's essentially the exact same site. So I'm going to click on my home page here. I've already added that as a preview domain on this site. So when I go ahead and I hit preview, you'll actually see here that this is actually loading my site, which is the same one that I essentially just signed up for. It is a different URL. But you'll see here that now this kicks me into a preview mode automatically. And we have a little preview bar at the top here, even showing the user, the editor, that, hey, you actually are in preview mode. Because that's also a really important thing too, is like, if you're in preview mode, you got to tell the user they're in preview mode, because they're going to get confused. You know, what allows you to get in preview mode, it's a cookie, right, Lewis? There's like a cookie you have to set to enable preview mode. Is that right?
Yeah, it is a cookie, and that cookie is used to make sure that the pages you're looking at are a serverless function instead of static content. So whenever you load this page, it makes a request to Agility CMS to get the latest data.
Yeah, so what's actually happened now is, like, now I'm in this preview mode. I actually have this cookie that gets set by Vercel. So if I actually look in here, I should see, yeah, here it is. Next preview data render bypass. So once those cookies are set by your application, which we've essentially done in the starter, is now this kicks me into preview mode. And so now if I make changes in the CMS, I'll be able to actually see those changes be reflected, you know, pretty quickly. So if I go to, you know, this rich text area, for example, yeah, actually, I would expect that to actually already show this. So that's interesting. Again, gotta love live demos. So I can actually see what's going on in my site here, because I think I actually created this one not too long ago. Let's see if I can find that one.
So is it maybe linking to a different deployment?
It could be. It entirely could be. Let's just double check here. Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, you can see I made that change there from 3 to 2, but I didn't go ahead and publish that page yet. So I still have, you know, if I open up this link in a new incognito tab where I'm, you know, not in preview mode, you'll see that I don't have those hearts there. So, you know, question here is, and this is kind of weird to get your head, to wrap your head around, is that You know, I'm looking at a static HTML site right now, the one that I'm looking in live mode here right now. And Vercel is not processing these requests at runtime. You know, this is pre-built HTML. It just works.
Vercel is only like giving you a static content here from a CDN, basically.
Yeah. So like when Vercel did my production build, it sort of spat out all that HTML, and then it sort of just caches all those things. But when I'm in preview, our server-side is configured to pull stuff to get the latest content. So it'll get the latest content as you're sort of seeing it right here. And you know, meanwhile, this is my actual live site. And when you're in preview, this runs your request in real time. So you know, as you make changes and you modify that, you know, let's just change this to like, you know, something fun here. So there we go. You can see my change sort of happen in real time there, and it's pretty quick. Agility actually uses our sync APIs behind the hood here in our starter. So when you actually you know, request a page and this request happens in real time, we're actually syncing content to this actually a temporary file system in Vercel, and it has that content stored there. So actually preview should be actually pretty fast as well. It just essentially does a delta to see if there's anything has changed since the last time that you made a request in preview, which is pretty cool. And then when you want to go ahead and actually publish something, you know, that's when we need to make a decision, right? You need to make a decision as a developer to be like, okay, when someone publishes something in the CMS, what actually happens? In a regular JAMstack site, you need to essentially kick off a brand new build. You have to rebuild the entire site, which can take time, right? There are builds for large sites that could take, those could take minutes or dozens of minutes. And these are the things that editors are a little, you know, not that happy about, is that they have to wait to be able to see the changes actually went through. And if their job is to get a page up by a certain, you know, date or time, and they're not able to do that or not confident about it, that's a problem. So what we've actually done here, let me just see if I have any webhooks set up here. I can't remember if I do or not. Yeah, don't have one set up. It's disabled right now. So what we could do, again, we have two ways. We could set up a webhook in Agility. Like I had this one here, which actually goes and connects to Vercel. It notifies Vercel whenever something in my system is published. And what that'll do is it'll kick off a rebuild and rebuild my entire site. Now, you know, again, that's great, but your build time could be minutes, and editors don't want to wait all that long for it. So, you know, what's something else we can do? Well, Vercel has the ability to, I'm not entirely sure what you guys call it. Is it stale while revalidate? Is that the way that you guys sort of explain it?
So in this case, it is a Next.js feature. So what we do is when you do a page, and that page has like revalidate set, we revalidate the page on the background every X seconds, right? So revalidate is a prop that you set to a number, and that number is an amount of seconds. So let's say you set revalidate 1. We are going to start revalidating your page on the background every 1 second if there is a new request coming in, right? So if you have, for example, a blog post that gets updated a lot, and you have like 10,000 requests to this blog post, right? All of those 10,000 users won't trigger a revalidation if they enter very quickly. No, it will always happen at most once every second, right? And all of the users, they don't have to wait for this background revalidation, right? They always get a static content. Mm-hmm. It just happens that once one of their users enter, a revalidation starts, and once that revalidation is done, any future requests will get the new content. So it just gets there on the background, but you never let the users wait on a serverless function to execute.
Wow. So Yeah, and it took me a while to sort of wrap my head around that concept. It wasn't until I really tried it that I actually kind of understood how it worked. So, what I did here in our starter is I set, a revalidate tag to 1 second. So that means, just sort of in other words, when I make a request to a page, it's going to wait a second, and then essentially in the background, asynchronously, outside of like, the runtime of the pages, will go and actually rebuild that page for me. So what this allows me to do is, now I don't even actually have to have a webhook anymore to kick off a new build.
Actually, a different way of seeing it is like your page is updated to the last second, right? So if your user entered, your page is most likely outdated because a second is quite fast. So what happens is you always serve like a stale content, meaning content that's the latest update, but we're doing starter revalidation. So we continually ship more updated version of that content, right?
Yeah.
It's not like we refresh the content, or it's more like we revalidate it.
So let's see this actually work in action here. So I'm going to go ahead and exit preview. So I'm no longer in preview on the site, which means I should see, essentially what I had last published there, which was the sort of the 2 hearts. Although this is interesting, I have seen this happen a few times where it sort of bounces around a little bit, but looks like now I'm in my site in live mode. Yeah, same difference. Now I can go ahead and let's say I want to publish a change on my homepage here. So I'm going to go ahead, publish this rich text area. So I'll see those those icons that I sort of just added. So I'll go ahead and I'll publish that. And what'll happen now is I can go back here, and if I just refresh the site here, it's showing me the old content still, but now I get the new one, because what happened is the first request that comes in, that kicks off that kicked off the background process to go and update my content, right?
The way it works is revalidation only starts when there is no request. So if you have a lot of visits, your users will probably always get like the latest content, because one of the visits before one of the users probably already activated the revalidation. But in this case, like the first request started the revalidation, the second request got the latest content. It's not like we run a timeout like that every
it doesn't run every second for everything.
Yeah.
It's just if someone hits that page, it'll sort of be like, okay, I'm gonna wait a second and then refresh, right? Is that essentially how it works?
Yeah, it is basically on-demand content.
Right. And yeah, one of the ways I've actually set up so I can test this is like one of the things I added here. I actually added like a timestamp. Yeah, here we go. So you can see the timestamp of when this was originally built was actually. Is that today? Is today the 27th? Yeah, today is the 27th. So you can see I'm on my static app here. So I'll make this a little bit larger. As I refresh this page, you actually see that value go up. It's because it is actually revalidating and rerunning my page every other second, so which is really cool. And as you can see, it's blazing fast still. So just to sort of recap there, what we did is we set up a preview environment. We told Agility about it. And that was it pretty much. The code here in our starter site automatically sets up the revalidate thing. So when you have it live and you publish it, content will update automatically. And then down here, we do have this other parameter that I'll mention here briefly, very, very developer-like, but it's fallback parameter. And the way that I understand how this works, and Louis, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here or want to add to that, but I think the problem is if you have fallback set to false, it means that when you're on your live site here, and let's say you've added a new page, your new page won't actually get recognized unless you were to do a full rebuild, because essentially, I guess when that build happens, it spits out all the known routes for that site, and then when a new request comes in, it doesn't match it. It's like, okay, well, this doesn't match a page, so it's going to 404. But when you set fallback to true, what that seems to allow you to do is gives you kind of a hook where Vercel will actually run your request as if it is a real page. And if it actually responds, without an error, then it sort of initializes that page going forward. So it's sort of like incremental static pages going forward. And it just sort of works out of the box. So that, if I had set that to false, I wouldn't be able to create new pages without doing a full rebuild. Am I right in that understanding, Lewis?
Yeah, I different way of seeing it would be like, we revalidate, you have the option to update content.
Mm-hmm.
With fallback, you have the option to add new content, right?
Yeah.
So when you set fallback to false, you're saying, these are all my pages, I don't want new content. When you set fallback to true, you are basically telling Next.js, listen, I have this amount of pages, but I also want that if you see a new page that wasn't pre-rendered, I want you to render this fallback page. That would be like a loading state. And in the background, Next.js will be like generating this new page. And once that page is ready, now you have also static content. And the next time a user hits that same URL, you will ship that static content instead. There is also a new option that is on Canary that's called fallback blocking. So instead of shipping a fallback with a loading state, you would wait for a serverless function to execute and ship the static content after it finishes, which will only happen for new content.
Right. Yeah, so like what I did to just illustrate that, what I did here is I created a new page called webinar page. I just added a rich text area just with some text that's going to show up here. I have not published this page yet in our system, nor have I published the sort of UI module that I sort of have on this page. It's actually, so it's not going to show on my website. It's not going to show on my nav or anything like that at this point. But now I go ahead, and even if I go to, /webinar, or what should I do, webinar dash page, it gives me a 404 because obviously that page doesn't exist, and then that's it. But now let's go ahead and actually publish that page. And so now the page is published, and if I refresh this page now, might take a couple tries until I get that latest content there.
Is that the URL?
Yes, it is. Webinar-page. I love live demos. I swear this was working before. Maybe it's something. Maybe it's just probably one of the last minute changes that I made to our starter thing that maybe messed this up. Yeah, it's actually looking like maybe the version I actually have deployed on. No, it looks like it does. All right, well, I'll stop trying there, but that should actually work. We'll take a look and see what happens there. But the idea is that this would actually show me my webinar page. So just use your imagination. Sometimes things don't work. But that's really cool. So what that does, in theory, what that does allow us to do is that this gives us a really good experience for users. They can, when your editors are in the system, they just go ahead, they make changes, they hit preview, they see them in real time, they go ahead and they hit publish, and that publish, should happen within a matter of, we're talking seconds. So this really addresses actually really all of the issues that editors often have with JAMstack implementations with other headless CMSs. And, what makes Agility a little different than other headless CMSs out there, and, I mentioned it a little bit already, but the concept of page management, and how much control you actually have over how your site is going to work. And Agility has a concept of two different types of content. You're going to have content that is not page specific. So we're talking like blog posts, authors, categories, tags. It could be something like products, news, whatever content that really isn't specific to a page, might be used across multiple pages, might be used in an app, digital signage, who knows, right? You always want to sort of structure your content in a headless manner that way. But Agility has this other area, which is pages. And it should actually allow you to add and configure your page tree. And these are set up to work in our Next.js starter out of the box. And, you can add, you add modules to your page. Modules are the actual functional components that actually make up your page. So, our homepage here has sort of two modules stacked on top of each other. Each module has properties, and you can configure, those properties as well. So if you wanted to modify this definition, you could go jump to the definition here and, be able to modify, the order in which those fields appear, add new fields to that. And this content here is like specific to that page. But you can have content that, that is on our blog here. Our blog listing, for example, is a good example here, where we actually have content that's specific to the page, but then it links out to a list of posts. So you can still sort of have that concept of a headless content that knows nothing about its presentation layer, but then be able to link that to stuff that does have to do with your presentation layer. So you sort of get the best of both worlds. You get the headless architecture, but you also get the familiar, architecture of, adding a page to a page tree, adding stuff to that page, and that page will display things. And that really is the sort of key thing here. Damn it. I thought I'd be able to go back here and hit refresh and it would work, but next time. I think you guys get the idea. So that pretty much, culminates what I wanted to cover here, and just doing a time check. It's just about 1 o'clock here too. But, one of the things, actually, Lewis, I just wanted to highlight here. I think the last time you were using our system a while back, this is actually our brand new content modeling area here. So new and improved, where it makes it a little bit easier to create and manage all of your models and be able to switch back and forth. So it makes it a lot faster to, make changes on the fly to your models while you're in the CMS. But for those of you who, are curious to check out Next.js, Vercel, and Agility, I encourage everyone, go to our starters, our website, sign up for the starter, play around with it, see what you like. You can deploy to Vercel for free. You can sign up for Agility for free as well. And there's also been some pricing updates on our end, where we have pretty low cost plans. We have free forever and with unlimited content. There's just limits on bandwidth. We have standard, which is about $47 a month, and then pro, which is about $600 a month, and includes support. So we're really trying to get more developers who might be a little bit more budget conscious, or customers in general that might be a bit more budget conscious to look at Agility for their needs there.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
If anyone has like any issues trying to use Next.js or Vercel, you're welcome to, in the case of Next.js, or GitHub repo has issues, also discussions, and the Next.js side also has an input for feedback. We make sure to read everything you guys post. And for Vercel, there is also support. You can contact Vercel also through GitHub, and there are a lot of communication channels. So if you see any issue, feel free to contact us and to join the community.
Yeah, and I just wanted to address there was a couple of questions here from Ishmael. It said, with Next.js preview mode, is real-time preview on the roadmap? Because at the moment you still have to refresh. Yeah,
so when you're in preview, you are looking at a serverless function. When you refresh, you get the latest content. If you want, what you mean is that you want to have like real-time updates where you don't have to refresh the page. In theory, it is possible. You could set up webhooks in the browser that point to the CMS, and if the CMS responds, then you could get the updates away too. The other question is, can Agility CMS somehow trigger to refresh the web page when you change something on preview mode? Next.js side is we don't really offer an API right now to allow CMS to update the page, but that's in our current roadmap. It's gonna be available at some point in the future.
Yeah, it sounds like that's like similar to like one of the features that Gatsby has with their preview, where it's sort of like that, and that's actually how our integration works with them. Is Agility, sends a webhook to some endpoint, and then that preview re-renders or essentially rebuilds, and then I think it uses like a WebSocket to essentially, if any browsers are currently open on that page, it'll somehow refresh that page. Pretty cool feature. Something that I know developers like a lot, but interestingly enough, I've actually spoke to some editors about it, and they're kind of just like, they're so used to refreshing to see content that they don't really care that much, it seems.
Yeah, usually what happens is when you share the content with someone, you want to share that specific version. You make a change, you share the URL again. So this is more like a good to have.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree on that too. It's a good to have. It's not something that I think is absolutely necessary. Yeah. I actually, to be honest, I actually find the Gatsby preview sometimes a little confusing because sometimes it takes a little bit of time to build. And so like, I'll be like refreshing the page and obviously nothing happens yet. And then all of a sudden it just refreshes. It'd be almost better if it did refresh just on a page refresh sometimes. But it depends. So yeah, so thank you everyone for joining today. There's a few things I just wanted to highlight last year before we sort of let everyone go is things. We have some upcoming events. We are going to continue doing webinars bi-weekly. So on the September 10th, we have an upcoming session here where we're talking, this is with our president and our CEO, I believe, to elevate your customer experience and how a customer experience can drive your revenue and growth. So that's more sort of on the business side. And then on the 26th, I'm doing another webinar on essentially, content modeling and content architecture. So we'll be doing a deep dive there of, how to model your content and keeping in mind, how that's going to work with page management, again, to ensure that editor experience is rock solid. So thank you everyone for joining, and a nice, huge, big thank you for Lewis for, spending the time to sit down with us and answer some questions about Next and Vercel. And it was also just, fun to hang out with you.
Thank you. Thank you, James. This was a great experience, and really thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And as Lewis said, if any of you guys have any problems, you can certainly let them know. You can also let us know too. We have a shared Slack channel with Vercel, and we chat almost daily anyhow about things. So let one of us know, and we'll let each other know if that's the case. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good night and enjoy one of the last weekends of summer. It feels bad to see that.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.